just do what God has called me to do. So that's why we're here, is to make the most out of that. And so even in terms of my own personal story, and I won't share every detail because all of you know sort of bits and pieces. I'll sort of cut to the chase for the part of it that where I think my story started to begin at the end. I came to genuine faith in Jesus Christ at the age of 9. I was a super hyped up church kid. I remember never falling asleep. I took it as like a point of being competitive. I was not going to fall asleep, even though I went to a boring church that had the same message every single Sunday. And I was one of the few kids in there that stood awake for the sermons, because I just wouldn't go down. That was how I was wired. But from the age of 9 to about 12, because of the wild dysfunction in my family, the arguments and the separation between my parents started to get more intense and more frequent until about the age of 12. There was just an ugly, messy divorce. And so I never forget walking into my mom's room, which was my parents' room. And for the first time, I saw these stack of papers on her headdress. And I looked at the stack of papers and they said, irreconcilable differences. I was like, what does that even mean? And I started reading through the papers, come to find out they had literally filed for a divorce for irreconcilable differences. Like, what does that even, like, I don't understand it. There was no infidelity. There was no, nothing crazy, no abuse. So what is this? This only happens to those people out there. We supposed to be church folk. How does this happening to me? So when I found out that had happened, and the fact that my parents weren't even going to tell me, like they were going to let this thing happen and not even tell me that this was official. That was a turning point for me. And from there, my relationship with Christ started to peter off until you get to Drexel University. And by the time I got there, I was a shell of a man. I had been drifting from God for all of those years through my teenage years, and was looking the part. I mean, I'm talking about look good, smell good, wearing confidence on the outside, but inside I was dying. And I'm talking about like really battling through depression, but I'm like the man on the gospel choir. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about like battling through depression, but I'm failing out of school. Y'all didn't even know that. Y'all didn't even know that part of the story. I'm talking about like I got all the potential in the world, but I'm still stuck at home with mom, and I'm living in a world of debt, in student loan debt, and I don't have a clue or a plan. So all of that to say, to go from that to God's finally sending me my dream girl and starting a godly family, to paying off $80,000 to become the first debt-free generation in our family line, to joining God's mighty men and realizing that I had a calling and a purpose, and to really understand what biblical manhood and masculinity was all about, and to come in and even make myself into a brand in terms of my career. I became a personal and professional development expert. I trained and taught thousands of educators across the country, did everything from national conferences to being on the radio, TV, the whole nine. And I was doing all this other great stuff for other people. Now you would think that massive turnaround, like, okay, great, we ready for the rapture to come. God is, like this is it. It doesn't get any better than this. And then suddenly I found myself in a period of 4 years where I had 3 job losses. And each one of those required my family to move. So while I am trying to provide the sense of stability and what they need, it's also working against me because of a fear that I had. See, all of that stuff that I experienced earlier kept me in a place of fear of really stepping up and owning my identity, who I was supposed to be. I identified with my job. I thought my job was like everything. I thought once I came out of all that stuff, all right, cool. I don't want to push and pry. I don't want to try to be great because that's going to cost me too much. So let me play it here and safe in my job. Let me stay at this job where I got to train people and I'm not able to mention the name of Jesus, even though it's welling up and burning up in my heart. And I'm training all these people across the country. And I got people even coming up to me after the session and saying to me, hey man, do you do motivational speaker? Hey, are you a pastor? Every time I listen to you, it's something about you. I don't know what it is. And here it is, God had this calling on my life and was just pushing me. I like to say it this way. I have my Jonah story. And I say the only difference between me and Jonah is that the whale had to spit me out 3 times instead of just one. So those 3 job losses were each of those opportunities where God was sort of pushing me out and saying, hey, listen, I have something for you. I need you to step into this bravely and boldly. And so what that all taught me is what I wanted to communicate on this call to all of you, which is that God has a very specific purpose and a calling for each and every one. And he has a purpose in mind and a plan. And we have to align with that plan. We have to get ourselves on board with what he has for us. And you can look the part, you can dress the part, You can hide, you can get lost and get all bound up in the bondage of fear. All of those things are secondary to the fact that we are nonetheless called to be exactly the man that God has called to be, kingdom men. That is the calling and that is the standard. That's the thing I messed up. And what I found out was that when you get outside of your lane, when you start doing other things, when you start getting distracted, you start being led by fear instead of by faith, that's when you cause an accident. So I want you all to be a part of this because you guys are all formative to my